if you had to imagine your daughter and she's being approached by guys who are not serious about their life, who are not serious about their dating, who are just wanting to get a bit of fun or a bit of, social dopamine from chatting up your daughter, and she falls in love because maybe she's never had a boyfriend before or whatever, and you're just taking the piss and she's taking this super seriously and praying heaps about it, and then at the end of the day it was just a big game for you. Well, as a parent, you would 100% be pissed off with this guy who is taking something very serious and, beautiful and holy in a way about this girl's desires for a relationship, and that's just being taken advantage of by your intemperance and your inconstancy.
I think even if you're slightly towing the line and there's a bit of awareness and okay, this could lead in that direction, that's a dangerous game. You're playing with someone's feelings, you're playing with someone's soul, that can cause a lot of harm. And so, especially on a hiatus, when you've chosen to be intentional, bro, get your shit together, because if you're doing that sort of stuff, if you're kind of going into that scenario where you're building up the pipeline though you're not really being intentional, there's a lot of danger there. And so I think it's your duty, if you've chosen to make this intentional decision, step up to it, because it's not just a game.
Welcome to the Fit for the Kingdom podcast, episode 25. You're here with your hosts, Tomas Monezcason and Nico Monezcason. Good morning, Nico.
Good morning.
It's the last pod before you fly out to Aussie.
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
Yeah, good. It's going to be a bit of a change of lifestyle, but
yeah,
I'm ready to hit it with all I've got, to be honest. Yeah, I've enjoyed the break. Last pod for a while, but yeah, I'm sure the Fit for the Kingdom grind set will continue in Sydney. It's only 2 months as well, not even before.
Dang.
I come back for Easter, so.
Oh, real? Dang.
Yeah.
That's good as, yeah. Now the plan's to get a few of the other boys on here, but to be honest, we need to start snapping up a few guests in Sydney.
Yeah.
Definitely due time. So our topic for today, to be honest, I always want to kind of avoid harping on about negative things. I don't want to discuss things in the negative. I prefer to discuss things in the positive. So I hope that's what we can do today. But it's a topic and questions that I get asked all the time for sure, or it comes up indirectly from different situations, which is female validation, dating, whether or not you should be dating. And then more specifically, the topic of this podcast is a dating hiatus. If you're a guy or a girl who basically said, well, I'm intentionally not going to date for a specific period of time. And then I guess we want to just discuss on what that looks like. And I think what matters most here is obviously that internal disposition. So we're having a conversation with one of our mates. He was saying he wants to take 8 months from the point that he recorded this video to not date any girls. And we were just sort of asking him, so what's your plan moving forwards? And he's like, oh, well, I'll still chat girls up, or what did he say? Filling the pipeline, basically almost in a way lining up girls for after the dating period is finished. And we sort of...
After the hiatus period is finished,
yeah,
to have them ready and available.
Yeah. And obviously he was kind of taking the piss, but we also challenged him in the sense that, well, while you might be abstaining physically from taking a girl out on a date, obviously your interior disposition or your heart is basically saying, well, I just need to get through this arbitrary time period and then I'm straight back into it. You haven't actually detached from that at all.
Yeah, it's a suppression of desire rather than a good redirection in a sense. Everyone has the desire to date. Everyone has the desire to take a girl out and whatever, hopefully eventuate in marriage from our human, biological, innate responsibility to reproduce and to carry on the bloodline, whatever. But that doesn't mean that you can't choose not to date for the time being. And so if it's a matter of, okay, I'm going to not really change my actions, I'm just going to kind of suppress this desire to make it formal or to take concrete steps, there's something going wrong there. And yeah, as you said, he was joking, but there are probably many people that do take that kind of frame of mind, and not just in in this sort of scenario, like in many different things, like a diet could be a great example. Like I'm not going to eat this for this time, but like the moment that dieting period clicks over, like I'm full send, or like with Lent as Catholics, I think that's a super common one, and where you have these Lenten disciplines, and the moment that Lent finishes and it's Easter, you just throw everything out the window and send it almost to the other extreme. And so, how do you regulate a good, well-lived hiatus in this sense in regards to dating? Like, what are the things you should have in place? What are the dispositions you should have? How should you be working with this desire, which is good and holy and natural and leading to the right thing? These are all kind of the questions that need to be asked, but I think primarily it's like you should only be making that decision to have a hiatus if you're actually going to live by it. And that's not just what, as we said, a suppression or a waiting for that time limit to end, but a true virtuous disposition to actually take and make fruit from this break that you're taking intentionally, to then hopefully grow for the purpose of then dating even better and with greater results, and hopefully a holy relationship and marriage.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. They are questions that have to be answered. I think, to be honest, it's kind of the same topic as well as being intentionally single. Like, let's say you haven't dated anyone, and we were talking about it the other day, but maybe upon some self-reflection, you've realized, actually, I'm not even in a position to start dating. But we all know examples of people who we know for a fact that objectively, either they have said that they don't want to date, or it's a situation where they shouldn't be dating, but then you'll see them act in like a flirtatious way, or they're chatting up girls, or they're hanging out with girls, or maybe then they do end up suddenly take a girl out on a date, and it's like, well, there's a bit of incongruency there between what you said your intentions were and then how that's actually played out.
Yeah, and I think it's like the key distinction that it's always made is not doing something versus doing the good thing. You can, like, normally it's applied to sin, but in this situation, it could be not taking a girl on a date versus not only not taking a girl on a date, but doing everything I can with this situation in which I'm single to grow and become a better man and work on myself to then give to in an abundance. And so, like, you can live a hiatus just purely with I'm not gonna date, but you may as well not, because you're not getting anything proper out of it.
Yeah.
Like, I was listening to Goggins, and I won't say the swear words, but he's got this famous video which is like, look, if you're gonna open that door in Iraq or in Afghanistan, like, open that door and go in hard.
Yeah.
Don't just peek in and have a little look and hope, like, he's like, you don't want to be remembered in that way. And it's the same concept. Like, if you're going to commit to something, go all in, because why do you commit to something if you're just going to give it 50% or less, because you're not getting the fruit of committing to that, and you're just tying yourself up for, in this case, 8 months to not actually enjoy this properly, to not make the most of it, to live kind of with a foot in each basket. To me, it seems a little bit counterintuitive. Maybe that's the way I work, but it's okay. If I'm taking a hiatus, I'm gonna, like, girls aren't even on the forefront of my mind anymore, because it's just something I'm not worrying about. I'm taking this time to work on myself for whatever reason that may be. Was it another relationship? I'm just not ready. I'm too young. Like, I haven't gotten things sorted out. Doesn't matter. But the fact is, like, okay, this time is for me. This time is for personal growth, spiritual life, forming those foundations, the foundations built on stone, where I can then take steps forward after this hiatus period is over to do the good thing.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely right. And I guess if we're to define female validation, like validation and attachment are words that are thrown around a lot, but perhaps it'll be helpful to define them. I guess how I would define it is, like, we all have different things. Like, for example, when we're in downtime or we're in times of prayer, there's certain things that will surface to our mind and that we tend to maybe be worried about, or we look forwards a lot to. I think social events and stuff is probably the biggest one here, because naturally they make us feel really good. It's like there's dopamine, we're spending time with people that we like, we're doing activities that are super enjoyable, like maybe playing board games or going to the beach. I mean, girls tick those boxes as well. So it might be the case that you might be like pretty disciplined, but you know, just being on the grind doesn't really compare to like all the emotion and consolation and dopamine and like oxytocin that you get from bonding from someone. Like, obviously, even biologically speaking,
You're wired for that.
yeah, like that's a very good and positive thing. Spending time with mates is really good. And spending time with girls, like I think isn't something that's talked about a lot, but for a guy to like bond and form a friendship with a girl, most guys don't have super deep emotional friendships with guys at all. So when there is a girl that they suddenly get along with or they really enjoy spending time with and they kind of open up with each other, it's a very natural thing to like really desire that friendship, because that would lead to matrimony, to marriage, where you do have a very good and wholly intimate friendship with one woman. So in no way are we saying that that's something that's negative, but it's very important to be aware of that instinct as young guys, because if you have a young 18-year-old dude or a mid 20-year-old guy or someone who maybe they've noticed that in their life they tend to sort of get swept away by girls, they're always texting, they're always sort of in that circle or roulette of having like a girl on the go. It's important for you to be aware of that, because that's a very strong desire within you. And if you're not actually aware of that desire, it's very difficult to control or regulate. So where does validation and attachment come in? Well, validation and attachment, in specifically talking about girls, is when you as a guy are in a state of life where you might be studying, or you might be young and you haven't even had like a full-time job yet, or maybe you're in the case where you have dated a few girls and you're like, shoot, like maybe I'm not doing the right things with those girls, or I've had a few relationships that haven't worked out. I just need to take some time for myself and sort of refocus, reorient, figure out what I actually like want in a girl or in a wife, and then sort of take that knowledge, take that virtue, take that self-awareness, and then go back into the dating world to hopefully make really good decisions about, okay, well, I'm not going to date this person because they're doing things or they believe things that has caused trouble in the past, and I don't actually want that in the mother of my children. So while I might have been physically attracted to this girl or gotten along with her well, it's actually very clear to me now that I shouldn't be dating her because of these reasons. But if you don't have that self-awareness or that maturity, let's say, to be aware of yourself and say like, shoot, I'm a 20-year-old guy, I want to get married, I think my vocation is marriage, and I really, really, really desire a relationship with a girl. If you suddenly take that desire and you jump into a social environment and there's pretty girls everywhere, and you're jumping left, right, and center, like at these girls and having relationships and stuff, the reality is that you haven't laid that groundwork in order to go into a discerning dating relationship. Because ultimately that's what dating is for. It's not to have fun with girls or to develop friendships that might not work out, but we can still be friends or whatever. If you're taking a girl on a date, it's sure, you will develop a friendship as you go through that process, but ultimately you want to discern, is this someone that I want to go further with? And if the answer is no, you need to have the emotional detachment and I guess the maturity to say, okay, cool, we've gotten to know each other, we've developed a bit of a friendship, but I can see from this point that it's not going to work out.
I 100% agree with what you're saying. Like an analogy that comes to my mind would be having a bottle of muddied water, or like with sediment, and you shake it up and it's all like you can't really see through it, but you leave it on the table for 2 weeks and you come back and it's clear and all the sediment's on the bottom. So it's kind of like you have all of these feelings, all of these emotions through various different reasons that they can come up, and they're good things and a lot of times, but they also do happen to blur situations, blur the way you see stuff in the present moment, in those moments where you are at a social event and there's good woman that could be a potential for you to date, whatever. And so what you're kind of getting at is that the hiatus is a matter of letting that water settle out, being able to see clearly before then you step into these situations, because for some reason or another you've decided that, okay, I need a time I need a time away from dating because this water is too blurry and I can't see where I'm going. And like as you were describing, if you're not careful, you do get these good things, these good desires, these good emotions that are natural to the build up to a marriage and that are meant to be used for the discernment of a marriage, being used for the wrong things or being pounced upon, or
Right.
you know. And so before you know it, you've fallen in love with a girl that you hadn't really intentionally taken steps towards dating, or yourself weren't intentional in the decision to start dating, but you've kind of been taking from the toolbox of the discernment of marriage, or even marriage and good relationships with a woman. You've been taking these emotions, these feelings that are meant to build up that marriage, but you've been using it for the wrong reasons. And so that's why the hiatus of the heart is so important, because it does give you that clarity. It gives you that time. Like, not only does it sit you in like a physical, like concrete set of guidelines in which, okay, I'm holding myself accountable to the fact that I'm not going to take any intentional steps towards women. It then frees you to do things that are good for you, to do things that build you up, to do things that actually do declutter the mind, and insofar as then you can go on and, with a clearer vision, do what you actually want, rather than kind of do what you want, though you're actually acting off desires, or the things you want being formed by your desires. Like, as good as they are, it can always go in the wrong direction.
Yeah, it's that half foot in, half foot out thing. Well, I think that analogy of the sediment is perfect. And I think, like, I guess where people also can trip up is, like, let's say that they agree to the idea. It's like, okay, I need to clear the sediment, but then they might think that it only takes a couple of weeks, or if it's just like an instant decision that, okay, cool, the next girl I date, I've got to be careful with or whatever. And you'll hear people say these things. And I think it's a misunderstanding of how long that sediment actually takes to settle. Because it's like, let's say you've said, again, if we use the example of this friend, it's like, okay, I'm going to take this hiatus, but I'm still going to be in social environments where there's girls. I'm still going to have conversations with girls. I might develop friendships with girls. And it's like, well, at that point, you might be doing all of that and you'll say that you're not going to date, but like internally, as the way that the body and human soul works, is that you desire intimacy with these people and with these girls. So, and people will, as you said, like, without even realizing, a guy will just fall in love with a girl and he might be too young or whatever, and then he has to end up trying to retroactively justify his rationale for why this girl is perfect for him, or why he is in a state where he is ready to date, when in reality that was never the case. But because he wasn't vigilant, would be the word, he wasn't vigilant about the way he behaved himself, or about how close he allowed himself to get with these girls. And again, I've said it before and I'll say it again, these relationships are good. Like, they fulfill a deeply good desire of the masculine heart, which is the relationship with the feminine. But if you're not vigilant about that early on, it really does lead you to trouble, because very few guys will have the maturity and self-awareness to say, oh shoot, hold on, it's been a couple of weeks and I'm actually way closer with this girl than I intended. Okay, cool, I'm going to make some adjustments, cut down the time that we spend together. There might be a friendship that develops into something more in the future, but right now that's not for me. Most guys will go down that track and then they'll end up dating however many weeks after meeting her.
It's too difficult to backtrack.
It's very, very difficult, and it causes so much more pain, because now you have got that emotional attachment or that dating relationship when it wasn't appropriate for you. Like, you didn't need that at the time. You're still struggling with getting your study and your self-discipline, your lust, all of these things under control. And now there's this girl beside you who's now your girlfriend, and that comes with its own sort of emotional and spiritual weight, that in the perfect state of things, or in a well-ordered life, that's introduced when you've actually got that baseline virtue and foundation. But it's like, I don't know, it'll be like trying to tow a super heavy trailer with a Corolla. Like, you'll get a wee bit of the way, but ultimately that engine's just going to end up getting worn down and it'll fail. Like, you need a diesel.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, like, a lot of those problems you mentioned are largely due to the lack of intentionality that comes with it. So in taking a hiatus, or a hiatus has to be intentional. Like, it's an intentional decision. And so if there's no intentional action that follows that, then you're doing it wrong. And I think that's a very clear and easy way to look at it. Okay, I'm taking a break. How do I line up the dots in between what I've chosen to do and what the result of that choice should be? And so if you're kind of, seeking out these interactions with a woman for no real reason, with no proper intentionality, I think there's something going wrong. And this is kind of where the point of debate is, but I don't think it's much of a point of debate at all. One thing is seeking out conversations with women in social events. Another thing is just like embracing them and accepting them. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't go on a hiatus and literally not speak to a woman until like 8 months is done or till that year is done. Like, you just don't, and it's easy to know. It's not like it's some freaking mystery to figure out how, like, where the intentionality is. Like, just look at your desires. Just see the way you're acting. See the things you're doing in these social situations. Like, if you're going to events where you kind of don't really need to be going to because of that as your main driving factor, like, you might be like, oh no, my mates are going, whatever, but So just be careful with that, because it's not that you might be able to go to that situation and be fine, but it's like you're working against the intentional decision that you made at the start. So I'm taking a break from intentional conversation, interaction with women for whatever reason, or with a guy for whatever reason. How should I act? Well, putting myself in these situations in which there's a lot of potential of girls or guys my age in which they could be a potential for dating, or I could get along great with one of them. Well, that's already, you're playing a dangerous game. So I think that speaks for itself. Like, it's a straightforward decision. Do things instead that work on building yourself up. So for a guy, like, I think it's easy to talk about it for a guy. What is your vocation right now? Is it work? Is it study? Is it whatever? Give 100% to that. Like, take a step back. Look at what you're doing in your day-to-day life. Can I give more time to my study? Can I give more time to my work? Can I be putting more effort in? Is there something that I can... My prayer, my physical health. Like, there's a heap of things that you can prepare and get ready and build up that are then going to lead to that good relationship, because a relationship is founded upon virtue. Like, if you're not a virtuous individual, why the hell would you be able to take on a girl and do so in a well-ordered fashion? Like, it just doesn't work like that. And so if you acknowledge that you're not ready, that you need to take a hiatus, use that hiatus for the good rather than for just like, okay, not doing anything intentional, but kind of staying in that same environment that's already not good for you. It's an environment that you have almost chosen to avoid due to the decision you've made. So yeah, I kind of think it is stupid to hold off while, like, to put it bluntly, like with marketing phrases, building up the pipeline. Like, what you're doing there is actually not conducive to the decision you've made. What you're doing there, you may as well not have made that decision. Like, you shouldn't be building up the pipeline, you should be building up yourself. Yeah. So then when it gets to that 8 months, like, you also shouldn't have like a burning desire for that 8 months to be over, and so you can like release back into that environment. Like, that's just that's a very unhealthy sign.
Yeah, I think, great 2 points there. I think what you just said there at the end is that the point is not, again, it's that same thing with like lust and chastity. The point is to not just abstain from doing the physical thing, but it's actually about, well, removing the disordered desire and just having a desire that is pure, or like that you just are happy to remain chaste. Like, it's not this thing. It's like, okay, sweet, I got through the day, phew, like tomorrow the battle starts again or whatever. Like, that's the wrong mindset. And I think as a single guy, again, it comes back to being aware of that desire for female friendship. It's like, during this hiatus or during you being a single man, you might be called to marriage, but you might not meet your wife for 15 or 20 years. Like, you legit have no idea what God might be calling you. So there's a certain element of detachment from that good desire of friendship with a female that you have to say, as much as I'd like to have that, if God doesn't bring this person into my life, or if right now I've discerned that it's not right for me, I shouldn't be living in this headspace where I'm constantly seeking that, or I feel super lonely, or that would lead me to say that, well, this person is attached, or this person has a desire disordered desire for female validation, because ultimately you should be content and satisfied without that. It's like, we were reading St. Francis de Sales yesterday, and he's like, if God brings you pleasure, then you can enjoy it if it's a good unholy pleasure. But if he decides to withhold that and he permits suffering, then you should be, internally, your reaction should be the exact same, which is that this is the will of God, and that's what I desire to do. What was the second point? Oh yeah, about talking to girls. There's a huge difference between like, okay, I'm stuck in line and there's a girl beside me and I'm gonna have a conversation with her. Like, that's obviously very normal and natural, and you should do that. But if you're going to social events, or if you're going to board games nights where there's gonna be heaps of girls, and then you're staying and chatting, or you're having one-on-ones with a girl, well, that's a completely different story, where you've almost gone and intentionally pursued this conversation, when it might have been a period where, if you are within this intentional hiatus, or if you are within this intense time of personal development, well, as much as I'd like to, I'm actually not going to go to that board games night. I'm actually not going to go to this party. I'm actually going to have an early night and hit an extra 45 minutes of adoration tomorrow morning, and sure, I'll see those people tomorrow and I'll have some good conversations with them, but the reality is that I don't need to be hanging out with these people, whether they be guys or girls, for however many hours a day or however many hours a week, if I am trying to focus on myself. And again, that requires self-awareness and intentionality to say, this is a good thing, but I'm going to abstain for it for this greater good, which is, you know, my spiritual development, my spiritual detachment from something which I feel I'm being drawn to inordinately.
Yeah, I think there's like a massive misconception in that if something's good, you don't need to abstain from it because it's good. And I mean, I can understand that, but it's wrong. Like, life's not always a discernment between good and evil. It's most commonly a discernment between good and greater good. And that's how the devil gets us. Like, he knows that he's not going to, like, once you get enough spiritual formation, he knows he's not going to fool you with, like, presenting you some evil. So what he presents you is some other good that's actually not what you're meant to be doing, some other good that's not what God wills for you in this moment. And you talked about, like, self-awareness, and I think St. Paul says, know thyself. And that's key, because in regards to a hiatus, like, you might be a guy who's built up this reputation of talking to a lot of women and being very flirtatious and being at every single social event. Or you might be a guy that's the complete opposite. You also might be a very handsome young man, or not that blessed in that department. Like, the reality is, every person is different, so your actions are going to have to be different as well. Because that guy,
like, if you're like good looking and the girls love you, well, you shouldn't just be walking around like Prince Charming.
Yeah. Like, you're going to have to freaking abstain a little bit more. Like, that's what your hiatus is going to look like, bro, whether you like it or not. Like, if you want to take a hiatus, or get out of those situations. And it's, and like, because it's one thing is conversations happening naturally, like you said, like we're just sitting in the line, or you kind of going to these events, and if you're that good looking man and you go to these events and you're quite a charismatic guy, and like you have a big friend group and there's girls that could be falling in love with you, like, you're doing something wrong, not only for yourself, but for them, because your intentionality isn't here, but you're putting yourself in a situation in which they could fall in love, or where you could fall in love. Like, it's just things going wrong, and it's just obvious. So
yeah, and people try to pretend that that's not the case. Like, you'd have to be super naive. Like, I know guys or girls listening to this, they are fully aware of that. Like, this isn't just something that we're making up, or like we're being puritanical. Like, that's how young men and women work. Like, you just cannot deny that. Like, it happens all the way from like 13 upwards. Like, we're not just inventing this thing where it's like, oh, there's a super specific hyper-social environment. You can't extrapolate it out. It happens everywhere, in all places, at most ages.
Yeah, and like, I also think, I see it as a dangerous thing, and I kind of detest that in fellow men and fellow guys, and with like that flirtatious attitude, and where there's a lack of intentionality, but kind of playing around with women. And like, some people might not be aware, some people may be slightly aware, but I think even if you're slightly towing the line and there's a bit of awareness and like, okay, this could lead in that direction, like, that's a dangerous game. You're playing with someone's feelings, you're playing with someone's soul, like, that can cause a lot of harm. And so, especially on a hiatus, when you've chosen to be intentional, like, bro, get your shit together, because if you're doing that sort of stuff, if you're kind of going into that scenario where you're building up the pipeline though you're not really being intentional, like there's a lot of danger there. And so I think it's your duty, like if you've chosen to make this intentional decision, step up to it, because it's not just a game. Like, don't make that decision if it's just a game. Just freaking ignore it and go and have your fun relationships. I just think if you're taking your dating seriously, then take your actions seriously as well. There's going to be guys who have spent their life doing what they know they need to be doing, like day in and day out. The people that know them, the girls that know them know that, okay, this guy kind of has his own structure. If he's taking an intentional hiatus, he probably doesn't even need to change anything about his life.
Right.
Because he's not kind of dipping his toes in those scenarios. So it's a matter of knowing what you're like, knowing your tendency, knowing how far you've pushed in the past, how far you know you're capable of pushing because your weakness of will, whatever, and making the right decision based off that. But for sure, take that decision seriously.
Yeah. I think one final concept that to me is very helpful to think about, like whether you're a guy or a girl or a woman or a man listening to this, if you had to imagine your daughter, like 18 or 19-year-old daughter, and she's being approached by guys who are not serious about their life, who are not serious about their dating, who are just wanting to get a bit of fun or a bit of, social dopamine from chatting up your daughter, and she falls in love because maybe she's never had a boyfriend before or whatever, and you're just taking the piss and she's taking this super seriously and praying heaps about it, and then at the end of the day it was just a big game for you. Well, as a parent, you would 100% be pissed off with this guy who is taking something very serious and, beautiful and holy in a way about this girl's desires for a relationship, and that's just being taken advantage of by your intemperance and your inconstancy. So I think if you're thinking about it in that way, even when you do step into a dating relationship, like you should think about that. It's like, this is someone else's daughter who I'm now taking into like an intentional period of discernment if you choose to do that. And you should take it very seriously. Like, it's not to say like you should wear a freaking lab coat and like walk around with a checklist, but again, it's that interior disposition. Like, are you actually doing this out of a genuine place of discernment and a desire to one day get married?
100%.
Or are you just taking the piss?
Yeah. The girl or the guy shouldn't have to be judging your intentionality in approaches. Like, it's not that hard. Like, Simon Carrington came to Campion and did a talk on dating and whatever. But one of the points that kind of stuck with me is he's like, more and more often, and it's being shown in studies, that guys, and especially in the people that he mentors, guys are kind of entering into these relationships and pulling out at like 4 weeks or real early on, or when there's a intentional step to clarity in the intentionality.
Do they pull back?
Yeah, they back out because they're not ready, or because they've got some problem, or they start dating and then they encounter like, man, that porn problem that I had isn't gone, or like, I'm not ready. But this suffering, like this crappy situation, especially for the girl who's kind of all in, like I think more often than not, it's the guy that's doing the wrong thing in regards to intentionality rather than the girl. He's the one that seeks or whatever. He's the one that pursues. That she's having to suffer this. She's having to suffer this problem because of the lack of intentionality at the beginning. And look, she may have kind of fallen into it as well, of like a lack of intentionality, and they went along with it. But like, the point still stands, as the guy, as a leader of the relationship, the spiritual leader, you need to be serious about that. And I think there's millions of reasons out there, especially now in young men, of why a hiatus should be something you're doing intentionally. Or at least you should be looking at your life and being like, okay, am I actually ready to date? Because that lack of intentionality has its toll, and it's forming crappy relationships, and it's just not leading you to the greatness that you could be achieving. They're ultimately my thoughts on the whole hiatus. But I think the primary pillar is being intentional with it and making sure your actions line up with that intentionality.
Yeah, it definitely all comes back to intention. And we were discussing it yesterday too, that if you have a truly righteous and well-formed intention, all of the questions about the specifics tend to fall into place because it's like you've actually got the guiding principle correct. So the questions about taking the girl out or not taking her out or doing this or not doing that, it becomes very clear when you're actually comparing it to that higher goal or that higher intention. So I guess as a final maybe encouragement, I would say to spend as much time in silence and reflection as you can prior to doing this, and seek spiritual counsel or counsel from other people that will not only help you make a decision but will also hold you accountable to that decision, because again it all comes back to without that intention all of this stuff falls apart because you have no direction or clarity around what you're doing.
It's pretty straightforward. It's a good way to wrap it up. I think using your friends as well is like a great asset, you know. Your mates, your close mates especially, always have an ability to judge the situation you're in much more clearly than you. For example, if you're deciding to take a hiatus, how long should I be taking a hiatus for? Like, normally your mates know,
right?
If you're rushing something or like. So I think it's an easy thing just to check in, like, bro, what do you reckon about this? Or like, should I be taking this girl on a date before you've made any intentional decision, because it can be risky.
Especially with dating.
You're just taking precautions that are necessary and that are harmless. And like, if you're afraid of taking those precautions, then that's already speaking to something going wrong. Like, are you afraid of getting the wrong answer? Are you afraid of being told no? Because that's a sign of an attachment. You know, that's it's just something to look at. Yeah,
for sure. And especially like if your mates they're all I guess struggling with the same problem, obviously don't ask them if they're taking a girl out. Like ideally, I guess the easiest way to do it is to ask someone older, but definitely someone that knows you and like knows your past and like your history of relationships and stuff, where from the outside looking in, it's usually pretty clear one way or another. Yeah, bro, like she seems like a real good girl, like you can go for it. Or look, bro, based on these things that have happened, like if I was you, I'd definitely like give it a few extra months or something like that.
Yeah, and then that analogy you use of like, if this was your younger sister at a party or whatever, or you'd hope she's not at a party. Anyway, how are guys approaching her? With what intentionality? Just reflect on your own life. Like, I wouldn't want someone that's decided to take a hiatus to be building up his pipeline by talking to my sister, you know what I'm saying? That's just not appropriate. You don't always just talk to a girl for the sake of starting a relationship or whatever, but if you're not willing to start that relationship, then there are ways that you need to be guarding yourself. There's a modesty attached to your actions that you need to uphold.
Yeah, that's so true. Liam Aquilina did a post about male modesty, and that was one of his points on like how you talk to girls, which is a huge part of male modesty. So maybe that's something that we can crack into 100%. For the next one. But one final comment from me is that episode 20 with Matt Mashevsky, we talked a lot about lust and chastity and how that relates to dating and marriage. And I think if that is even like a slight problem in your life as a guy or a girl, but especially a guy, definitely go check that podcast out. Because, you know, we'd be naive to think that that's not perhaps one of the biggest obstacles and problems in today's world. And the reality is, if you're struggling with lust or porn as a dude, you should not be dating and you should not be in a relationship. Like, fundamentally, that's what it comes down to. There's a difference between maybe falling, you know, very irregularly, like in terms of months or whatever, but I think if you can't even be chaste with yourself, you should not expect anything different with a girl. So I think that's what it comes down to. But please leave us a comment on both YouTube and Spotify if you enjoyed the episode. And on Spotify, you can also leave us a 5-star rating, which helps support the podcast. If you'd like to support us financially, we've got a Kingdom Patrons group, which helps fuel the mission. You know, we just had our round of St. Michael's Troops events, and for example, one of the areas that we were coming up short was on a bit of a marketing budget. We spent a lot of time and energy putting together like some marketing standard operating procedures. Like, we want to record these aspects of the event, record the talk, and then put that together for people that missed out, or maybe people that haven't been to the event yet that see it and say, man, this is epic. Like I really want to be a part of this. I'll come to the next one. So that's sort of an example of what we'd be using our funding to do, to pay for the editing, to get the camera equipment, the microphones, etc. And also, because it is a bit of an inner circle, we do coaching calls and video calls with these guys. So sometimes we'll be updating you on the state of the mission and sort of what our current objectives and I guess things that we're working on are, and other times it'll be coaching calls, so we're giving you a bit extra on topics like what we discuss on the podcast, or whether it might be, you know, time management or discipline or productivity, any number of things, but just trying to give you guys as much value as we can. So a huge thank you to all the men who are already contributing to that and making this work possible. And we invite you to consider supporting us and joining the front line. So if you have any questions for us, comments about the podcasts, guests, or topics that you'd like us to cover, please put those in the comments section or send me a DM. If you're not already following us on social media, you can follow Fit for the Kingdom on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. You can follow myself on Instagram. I also have a shorter podcast on Spotify and YouTube, which you can search with just my name. You won't find Nico on social media at this stage, which is good, but feel free to hit me up and I can pass on a message. Yeah, I think that was it. Definitely spread the podcast around. If you don't want to comment, send us a message. It's helpful to know that people are listening to this and getting stuff out of it. But with that, we'll see you in 2 weeks for the next one. God bless.